Hello. We are here today to talk about how Louise is embracing constructive development theory on her own personal journey of development. My name is Dr. Darren Stevens, and this is Dr. Louise Reader. Now, we met at university, and suffice to say, when I meet anybody new, I tell them about my theory anyway. So I've got a bunch of questions here that were written quite nicely by ChatGPT, and I'm going to ask Louise the questions to determine her personal journey through CDT and how she's used it or embraces it. And if you find that you can mirror this or there are any parallels in what you've been doing, then get in touch. Okay, let's start with the first question. So, hello.
Hi.
So what first drew you to constructive development theory and dynamic intelligence?
I think I've always been interested in the way that we think about things, how we recognise ourselves, how others perceive us. I suppose there was a little underlying interest in psychology that's never really had the opportunity to come to the foreground, and constructive development theory appealed to me partly because of the granularity that it gives in terms of how we present ourselves, but also because it suited me at a particular time in my life to try and seek my own understanding and how I wanted to develop as an individual moving forwards.
That's true for me as well, because I came to adult development at a certain age, probably back when I was your age, and it kind of clicked as to, this is why my friends are behaving this way, it's because they think like this. So I absolutely relate. So do you remember your initial reaction when you encountered CDT or the whole framework?
Well, as you said at the beginning, you tell everybody about your theory, and at first, I think the first time I ever met you, it was when I was trying to get a job done and catch up with another colleague, and I wasn't that interested at that point. I think it was probably about 6 months to a year later that what you were saying started to seep in and everything just made sense, and I wanted to learn more.
Yeah, because it says what stood out or challenged your assumptions, because we all know what we know, so what challenged those assumptions?
I think it was questioning me, and you say we all know what we know. As I said, where I was at that point, I questioned me and how I'd got myself into a particular situation that was a really difficult time. And I knew that if I didn't change, then it could happen again. And I wanted to understand a little bit more about me and why it was happening, and to challenge my own construct of myself, really. I know
Good word.
I've learnt the language, but by doing that, by thinking about the things I was learning about the theory, I was able to, as a lay person, even then begin to understand, okay, yeah, I can see myself in that particular set of cognitive intentions. They tend to dominate, and perhaps that's not a great thing. So as a lay person, I was able to start to break it down, but I was already challenging my own assumptions. I think the biggest surprise for me was during learning about the theory was that actually my thinking is quite complex compared to most people, and I was really surprised at the level of the vast majority of the population's thinking, and I think my assumption is people think like me or can think common. Like me.
And that's common, and that's what goes back to when I first started learning about adult development. I was learning about Otto Lasky's work and Robert Kegan's work, and I thought my friends and people around me were thinking if I understood it, they could understand it, but it's just not true. And if you look at the bell curve of cognitive complexity, the majority of people are at a certain level, and if you are just a little bit to the right of that level, you will see and understand things that others won't see and understand. And what this does for me is it gives me a label, if you like. I know labels aren't the best, but it gives you a label and a framework to operate within, that you can gauge your own understanding against someone else's understanding. And what we don't talk about enough is the fact that if you if you have a greater understanding than your friend or colleague or family member, then the responsibility, the onus is on you to control the interaction, because they don't see what you can see. So why would you then confound them or dumbfound them with language or patterns that they can't see? So you use the word construct, because one of the questions here is, how has engaging with CDT changed what the way you see yourself and your identity? But it doesn't change the way you see yourself. It changes the way you interact with yourself and construct yourself, which is kind of what you hinted at.
Yeah, I think when I started learning some of the detail around the theory, I was able to build a framework about myself that I already knew. And that framework helped me to make sense of parts of me that perhaps aren't helpful to me in life. And that enabled me to say, okay, do I want to change? What do I want to change? Why do I want to change it? And what should I really pay attention to in order to become the person that I would like to be in terms of how I present myself to the world?
And if you notice the language, it's not about how you change other people or interact with other people. It's about how you construct you in order to be the best you in the moment, and it's from a position of self-awareness. So one of the questions here is, in what way has working with this theory changed how you relate to others, friends, family and colleagues? But in reality, if you focus on you and you work on how you think, by virtue of changing your thinking, changes your behaviours, that impacts the people around you, and they will notice the differences in your thinking and behaving. And some of them might not even notice it from a thinking perspective, just in how you respond. So, for example, have you ever got to the point where you've said, you know what, I'm not going to take this anymore, I'm just going to stop doing it? People notice when you stop doing things. And what this does is it gives you a framework and some cognitive intentions, such as internal, individualist, own, observer, that you can use as a reference point for understanding yourself and running things through your own system first before saying, yes, of course I'll do that. Yes, I can help you. Yes, I will do that. Did you find that you had a much more internal locus of evaluation when you started to understand how you think?
Well, I'd been...
That was a leading question, I apologise.
It was completely leading. I'd been seeing a counsellor for some time, and I knew that two of my biggest problems that caused me a lot of, I suppose, it drained me as a person, is that I'm a people pleaser and I don't hold boundaries very well. Now, knowing those things and knowing how to deal with them are two quite different things. And it was when I did the profile that I knew, and I could see how much I did seek external validation when really I didn't need it. And that if I could work on my own self-belief and trust myself and my own judgment, then the need for external validation reduces, and the assurance of me being in a strong position to make decisions that are right for me starts to override that. So the logic behind that means that I am much better at, before saying yes, of course I'll help because I want people to like me and I want to be seen as doing well in my job and so on and so forth, before I say yes, I will check it. I'll filter first. So I ask, what is this person asking? Is it realistic for me to do this? If I do this, what is the benefit to me? There doesn't always have to be a benefit, sometimes it's running the kids around and I've got the time and I've got the energy, so okay, I'll do that for them. But that filter helps me to manage my time better because I'm not saying yes to everything.
Definitely.
And in terms of my self-belief, I think that the journey of understanding how I think, the level at which I think, and to coming out of a difficult time of my life, to have the time and space to actually start to soak up new knowledge, all of that has helped my self-belief. So I think my balance between internal and external is a lot better.
So just on those two things, right? Because the next two questions are, has CDT given you a language for something you've always felt but possibly couldn't articulate? And in the next one, if you reflect on your own AQ journey, where do you feel you are now, and where do you think you began? So the point is this: CDT has given me a language because I now think about it in terms of cognitive intentions and levels of thinking. I can understand when someone's external. I can understand when my students are, let's say, they're project management students rather than psychology students. They're going to be more procedural and detail oriented. Well, I can hear it in their language and I'm listening for it. So it's given me the language to articulate what they're doing and how they're doing it in a moment, as well as me. So if you reflect on your AQ journey now and the language you use and the cognitive intentions and all this other stuff, where do you think you were when you first heard about it in comparison to today?
If we're focusing specifically on the use of language, I would say that I observed, felt and experienced things that I would make sense of and respond to accordingly. What I now know is that I was recognising people's construct in terms of their patterns of behaviour.
Yeah.
And I was observing how to respond to those based on my level of awareness, on the awareness quotient at the time. And, you know, fortunately for me, I am quite high on that. And that, I suppose, explains why people find me relatable, they trust me for advice, and they seek me out to be a support. So it helped to make sense of that.
So for other people, if people seek you out for support, it's not because you're a good listener or you're lovely. It's because you're a higher level thinker than the people who are seeking you out, and you see things differently to them. Okay, so you can see patterns they can't see. They don't know this, they don't label it this way. But the reason they're seeking you out is because you are potentially higher on the AQ scale than they are.
So if you're invited to coffee regularly by a colleague, or you're the go-to person when friends have problems, it's because you've got something to say that they haven't seen. And that's, I suppose, the informal behaviour that I experienced. And I guess that's it is a lot more formalised now. And I would hope that, you know, my awareness has increased over the last year, because it's been about a year, because of the work that I've been doing. And there's that little handy there. Well, maybe we'll have to retest.
So 2 more questions. What has been the most confronting or surprising realisation that you've had through using CDT?
I guess in trying to be a good person, I wasn't. That's it. That's the end of the sentence. Because I was so resource stretched, you know, in terms of my physical time and energy, but also emotionally drained, trying to make sure everyone around me was happy and okay. And, you know, I was super mum, super career person, super everything. I think that has really been the biggest change, and it's still evolving now, because there's been some quite big hurdles over the year that have still taken a lot of time and energy, but certainly the way I think is very different to what it was 12 months ago. And as we settle into a new home and things start to become a little bit more balanced in life with circumstances that are outside of my control, I know that I'm more settled as a person, which I think will make me more productive over the next 12 months.
If productive is what you want. But also, did you notice that the things are outside of Louise's control, which means she's not constructing her environment, which is AQ9?
Well, I kind of have, but I knew I'd put the pressure on myself, you know, moving house and things like that. That is my construct. It's just... I had to be prepared for the time and energy it took.
So, final question then. Why does this work matter to you at a deeper level? So beyond all the coaching, which you're starting to use it in a coaching framework as well, but beyond coaching outcomes or professional success, why does this work matter to you at a deeper level?
Yeah. Well, as we haven't touched on the professional, I'll briefly mention that, and then come on to what it means to me. So, from a professional perspective, one of the big things that I'm interested in is around AI, understanding AI use and development, but also how it's a complete paradigm shift in the way that society will function over the coming years. And at the heart of this shift, for me, is that we have an entire population who needs to understand how that shift can support them. And to do that, the ability to alter the way we think about thinking is absolutely crucial. So I'm really interested in that as a research area, and I'm soaking up as much knowledge as I can so that we can pass it on to students and to business leaders, to whoever needs it, really. So that's one aspect. And then you mentioned coaching, which, as I said, I've always been a go-to person for advice. And I suppose formalising that is something that is important to me, because I like to be able to help others succeed. So that's a motivating factor for me. In terms of how it's touched me personally, I think the intricacy of it and the granularity of it is appealing, because with the 50 different cognitive shortcuts, the number of combinations of structure that we can see as an outcome for an individual are almost infinite.
Yeah.
And if you're going to help a person, it's best to understand them as fully as possible. And this theory really does get into the skin and the heart and the soul of a person in the way that they think. You're raising your eyebrow because of the soul word. But it peels back the layers and looks at the person raw. And in my early experience of coaching, I've seen that happen already. But in having that relationship and that trust between you and another individual, and to be able to go that deeply into the way they think, it's a responsibility, but it's also a real opportunity to affect real change in the people that you're working with. And I guess that's something that I've taken on board over the last year for my own development.
And then I think one of the difficult parts about this is how the challenges in introducing CDT to clients, to friends, to colleagues, to whomever, especially if they're new to developmental thinking. Have you got any? Well, how have you overcome it? How do you introduce CDT to other people?
Well, we've spent many hours talking about this and how to simplify the complex, and it is a challenge. I hope people will listen to videos like this and personal stories, really, because I think that you only have to be on social media for 2 minutes and you start to see people advocating for change, whether it be your spirituality, whether it be how to be a better leader. All of these sort of feeds on the socials are all about how we change ourselves as a person. And I guess if the reach to those individuals can have a clear message that you don't need to change your skills and knowledge, you need to change the way you think. If you want to change the way you think, this is the most granular solution to really understand how you think, which is a really important base point for any kind of change. So lots of people want to change, but they're not looking at this as how.
And looking at the things in your thinking that's the most out of kilter, basically they're the ones that we should be looking at first.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, that's a coaching foundation. I've got a number of books coming out, Thinking Deliberately, which Louise has edited. So with things like Thinking Deliberately, Leading Deliberately, and Coaching Deliberately, where do you see CDT and next level coaching, if you like, having the biggest impact in the next 5 years? And we can end with this question.
as I said, that people are a little bit lost at the moment. There are massive things going on in the world, whether it be AI, whether it be global and political disruption, and whether it be post-pandemic issues for young people. There's so many things going on that are making people question their purpose and question themselves. So if NLC can, and next level coaching, if that can be presented as a way to sense make yourself and also to help you to sense make the world around and identify your purpose and direction, I think that's going to be quite pivotal. And I go back to what I said before, people say they want to change.
Let's have another go at that question. There are builders all around because this is a new estate. Okay, so if every coach used CDT, how would the coaching industry change? And then to finish off as quickly as we can before the drill starts again, where do you see CDT and next level coaching having the biggest impact in the next 5 years?
Okay, so first question, in terms of impacting the coaching industry, it would enable much more targeted interventions through much more detailed understanding of clients and the way that they think. Currently, the coaching industry is very much about supporting individuals to reach particular goals, whether they be life goals, whether they be professional, or maybe a combination. The issue with that is that actually they might be supported in achieving those goals, only to find out that actually that's not what they really wanted in the first place. So if we change the way that we think about things and work on our balance of the cognitive intentions to raise our awareness, then that supports better decision making towards better outcomes for us as individuals. It also helps with relationships as well with others. Darren mentioned, if you raise your awareness, you understand others better. You can see patterns in them that they may be blind to themselves. That can be a real advantage when it comes to getting along with the people around you, your family, your friends, but also in the pursuit of your own aspirations. It helps your relational thinking as well as purpose and how to achieve. So yeah, it could have a massive impact on coaching because of that granularity and because it changes the way you think rather than gives you 10 steps to achieve X.
Exactly, because what we're doing with next level coaching is looking at the fact that you construct the problem at your level of construction. So when you have somebody who understands your level of construction and helps you to think at a higher level based on differences in cognitive shortcuts, the way you think changes, therefore the way you construct the problem changes. And I think that will have a much bigger impact on the overall coaching industry once Coaching Deliberately comes out as a book. That kind of thing. All right, I think before the next drill starts again, I think we'll leave it there. Thank you, Louise, for doing this and taking part in this. If you would like to get in touch and, 1, do a profile, 2, team profile, individual, or some developmental work with you or your organisation, see the link below. Thank you very much.